Okay, great. Let us do the final exercise where we talk about gRPC and GraphQL. I'm going to start with gRPC. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to open a new tab and we're going to navigate to grpc.io. And I would like to go under docs. This is pretty much a site that talks everything and anything about gRPC. I'm going to go to docs and I would like to go to the introduction to gRPC right here. Uh, Everything starts with a protocol buffer or a proto buffer. Okay. A protocol buffer is nothing else but a definition of types, messages, and services. Okay. Here's a protocol buffer that describes a single service, say hello, right? A single operation under the greeter service. And here's the hello request and the hello reply that contains just strings. Okay. So the messages are your types, your service, and the individual RPCs are the individual operations in your API. Okay, so as soon as you have the protocol buffer, now you're going to use the protocol compiler to parse it and create the stuff for your server and your client. Okay, depends how you invoke it, you create the corresponding element. And there's all kind of different ports for specific language, C++, Ruby, Android, Python, Java, Go, and so on and so forth. Okay, so pretty much that's what it looks like. The next thing I would like to do, and let me go to my cheat sheet. I want to take you under a production grade API that has been recently deprecated, June 13, 2023. This is the Google Assistant API. Those of you who know, who have Android, you know what it is. Those of you who have Apple, it's like Siri. Okay. I can clearly see the different operations, the different RPC operations, create device, and so on. And if I select any one of these, I'm going to now be taken under the documentation that says this specific RPC. And I see the inputs. Here it is, create device request. I see the outputs, device. Okay. If I select the create device request, here's I need to provide a device, which is a separate type altogether, and the parent, who's the parent of this device, and so on. Okay, so that's what it is. Pretty much, pretty straightforward, at least with respect to the documentation and what it looks like. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the protocol buffer for this specific API, right? We only have the presentation layer to show you. What I can do, however, is I want to show you more recent uh, Google API, one that I've been using for a while, the Google Seat API, which is pretty much Google Sheets API right here, which is pretty much the API that gives you the ability to integrate with Google Spreadsheets, right? Update those spreadsheets, read those spreadsheets, and so on. I've been using it quite a bit. Um, this is also gRPC API. I know that. Okay, this is also gRPC API. If I take you under the reference, you will see a bunch of RESTful resources. Why are you seeing the RESTful resources? You're seeing RESTful resources, even though these are the different methods, batch update, create, get, and so on. They have created a front end for this API that is RESTful. I think this is an admission that RPC is not good enough. Right? That's my interpretation. Please do not think that Google or anyone of that sort uh, came up with that interpretation. No, this is my interpretation. Okay. So if I go to the batch update very quickly, as you can see, there is a gRPC transcoding syntax. So we're able to use the RESTful notation with post, whatever, the RESTful notation, even with gRPC APIs. So there's something that is run on top of it to restify or make these gRPC interfaces into RESTful interfaces, because it's what most commonly used. And in fact, if you click this link, gRPC transcoding, you will be told as much. APIs that follow resource-oriented design are defined using RPCs, but the resource-oriented design framework allows them to be presented as APIs that largely follow REST JSON convention, because these REST JSON convention are simpler. So to me, this is an admission by um, Google, or as I take it as an admission by Google, that this is what the most common notation for APIs, right? Interface for APIs, and that's why they are starting to do this type of things. Even though this API is this interface for these APIs is pretty old, right? It's a few years old already. Okay, so this is your gRPC. Feels and looks very similar to all the other RPCs. With the exception if you use this HTTP and gRPC transcoding in order to make them look like they're RESTful APIs. All right. I don't know. The best of both worlds gives the ability to your developers to do whatever the heck they want, and then the users use a RESTful type of an interface. I don't know. Whatever. I will just work with RESTful and be done with it, as opposed going through this extra transcoding, as they call it. But it is what it is. Okay, so that's your gRPC. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to explore GraphQL, right? And of course, I'm going to take you under the graphql.org, I believe. Org. It's not an IO. Yep, it's org. And I'm going to go all the way to the bottom because I like these animated GIFs. All right, this is the first one I would like to look at. On the right-hand side, you have the schema. In here, you can define your different types. We have a type that's called character. We have a type called planet and type called species. Within the type character, you have a name, which is a string. You have a friend, which is a collection of characters. This is a recursive definition, right? And you have a home world, which is the planet of type planet, and you have a species, which is of type species. And then you have the corresponding definitions for planet and species. And if you define now these types, you can also define a query. And you say, I want to define a query called hero, and this hero returns characters, or returns a single character in this particular case. If this is your schema, then you can use a query to express this type of information. You say, okay, I would like to query the hero. I would like to retrieve a hero. Actually, it's more like query hero. And I would like to get the name of the hero. Out of the friend of this hero, I would like to get the name and the home world. Out of the home world, which is of course of type planet, I would like to get the name and the climate. And I would like to get the species of this particular hero. And I'm interested in the name, the lifespan, and the origin. The origin also being planet, I'm only interested in the name. I don't care about the climate. By expressing this type of queries, you're able to query and retrieve any types of information that relate to hero or to character type. Anything at all. If I was to do something like this in a RESTful API or an RPC API, generally speaking, yes, I can go ahead and create a single operation, but I will have to go ahead or I can combine, give me the character, then do another request, get the planet, then do another request, get the species, right? So I can build a query that just gives me this data, but it's not very easy. What if for the origin I also wanted the climate, right? Origin is a planet, right? What if I also wanted the climate? What? Am I going to go ahead and change the code yet again? Am I going to add another operation? What am I supposed to do? You see? So that's why GraphQL gives you the ability to fetch any types of data related to a particular type. That's why I told you. It's a single request by the user. It's multiple, and you can get as deep as you can the corresponding information. And you will see all that if I take you to this animated GIF, because in this case, look, we're pretending we're typing a query, right? We're typing a query that says, let me mute my phone 1 second, guys. There we go. That says, hero, I want the name, I want the height, and I want the mass, right? And you're able to get all the different information. Luke Skywalker, height, and so on, right? And that's the only change you need to express from a user's perspective, right? What types of data you create in your query, which is super duper, right? This is massively different than what we were talking about already. That's why I like GraphQL quite a bit. There are problems, of course. Nothing comes for free, right? So initially, the major problem was authorization. Do you have authorization, appropriate authorization to gain access to all that data? Nowadays, we have all kinds of different frameworks in order to help you with that authorization, right? So that's not a problem anymore, but it used to be initially. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to a website. It's pretty much a GraphQL API. Here it is. Yeah, we can clear that. We don't need it anymore. There we go. This is a GraphQL API that deals with trails and lifts out of a snow mountain resort, right? If you like skiing, if you know what I'm talking about, there's lifts. You can go to one of the different trails. You can go downhill or cross country and so on. This particular GraphQL, can I resize it a little bit? Yes, I can. This particular GraphQL pretty much implements this type of an API where I can fetch and manage trails and lifts. Okay. Every single GraphQL API comes with this type of a user interface. This is called the GraphQL playground. Okay. All the way to the right, you will have the schema and the corresponding documentation. So here's the schema. It contains different types: the left, the trail, some enumerations, and here's the different queries: all lifts, all trails, left, and so on. Okay, and it has mutations, subscriptions. Beyond our scope, we're only going to focus on the all lifts query. So what I want to do is I would like to create a query that fetches the all lifts. So all lifts takes a single argument, or it has an optional argument, status, and it takes as an output a collection of lifts. And these exclamation points indicate non-empty. If you see an exclamation point, it's mandatory. You cannot have empty data if you see an exclamation. Okay. So in this case, I know it's a collection because I see lift. The lift type is enclosed inside square brackets. Okay. So how do we express this type of query? You're always going to start with query like this. And now you can open and close curly braces. And within it, now you can indicate, okay, what do you want? Which query do you want to search? I want to search, or I want to use the all lifts query. So all lifts, and I have IntelliSense as well. So all lifts, curly braces. All right, what do you want to fetch? Well, I need to go and check what types of data this lift type contains. So I'm going to go to the lift type. Here we go. So I like to get the name. So let's get the name. Right? Here it is. Actually, you have IntelliSense as well, right? So if I type NA, you get to see it. You can select it, right? So let's fetch the name. It doesn't have to be comma separated. And let's grab the status as well. Status. Status, like this. All right, let's grab this. And if I run this, if I execute it, now I'm going to get a list of all the different lifts. Here it is. Here's the different lifts. Here's the name, Astra Express, Just Cat, and so on, and whether they're open, on hold, closed, and so on. And what you can also do is you can also use this input parameter. Look at the input parameter. It says status. What if you only want to see the open lifts? You don't care about the lifts that are not working, right? They're on hold or they're closed. Who cares about those? So then you can go right after the all lifts. You can open and close parentheses. And you can say status colon open like this. So you're saying from all lifts, the status is open. That's what I'm interested in. Give me the name of the status of those. And if you execute it, now you only see the open lifts being returned back. And that's the beauty of GraphQL. With pretty much a single operation, I can fetch the lifts, I can fetch the associated trails, I can do whatever. The last thing I'm going to show you in this exercise, I'm going to switch back to the developer tools very quickly. more tools, developer tools, and I'm going to send this request again. All right. Again, I'm looking at the fetch XHR. That's what I'm interested in this particular case. And I'm going to send that request. Again, network, fetch XHR, send. Here's your request. And if you select this request, you will see that it was sent to, it's a post. It was sent to snowtoothmoonhighway.com. And if I go to the payload, this is the request body. The payload contains the request body. And if you look at the request body, it contains the query. The query is passed as a string right here. Right. So at the end of the day, GraphQL is still an HTTP request. And the query is sent like this. Now, the no-name platform presents GraphQL queries very nicely because you're going to be able to see the all lifts on the path. Right. On the path. That's what you will be able to see. So you have a much easier time understanding the operation that is sent with your browser or the GraphQL query that you're sending. With this, my good people, we have concluded the final exercise. All right, we have concluded the final exercise. One more to go, and that's to summarize and recap, and you're off.